In a world obsessed with politeness and appearances, what can we gain from the Israelis' unapologetic directness and authenticity? Do you want to learn how to hack the Israeli mindset in your own life?
Israelis work with their gut and they're very fast at adapting. Connection isn't an option in Israeli culture. It becomes a currency of trust. Perfection, that doesn't exist in the Israeli culture. It doesn't value that. Israelis value boldness and they value trying over the concept of failing. Nobody cares about failing here. Creativity lives in chaos, and Israelis are comfortable with it.
Welcome to the Israeli Trailblazers Show. I'm your host, Jennifer Weissman. After years of living in Israel, I'm now back in the US, and I realized one powerful truth. Israelis are wildly misunderstood, and yet they're quietly helping your lives in ways you never even think about. But consider Waze, Monday.com, AI-aided colonoscopy, remote pregnancy monitors. The list is endless in terms of Israeli contributions to mankind. The media doesn't help. They rarely show this side of Israel. But this is where Israeli Trailblazers comes in. What if you could borrow an entire cultural mindset, one that's built on resilience, boldness, radical honesty, and use it to transform your own life? In this episode, we're going to learn how to reverse engineer the bold, no BS Israeli mindset. They are famously fearless innovators. They move fast, they tell it like it is, and they refuse to let the fear of failure hold them back. What can we gain from the Israelis' unapologetic directness and authenticity? Sound intriguing? Well, this is where my guest today, Tamar Pras, an Australian Israeli entrepreneur, coach, speaker, and founder of Citizen Cafe, the world's largest community of Hebrew learners and Israel lovers. She has over 20,000 students in 25 countries across the globe. So let's dive in. Hello, Tamar.
Hi, Jennifer.
We all have a special set of glasses that we see our own world and our own culture.
All cultures really are similar. They all want to thrive and they all want to grow, but they really are all different because of their value system. And when you put someone else's cultural glasses and you are actually aware that you have your own, instead of walking around thinking that the world is just the way it is because that's how you see it, the world stops being universal and it starts being personal, what I call a cultural DNA. And it's like discovering this emotional operating system of a society. In Israel's case, it's a system that's built on survival and speed and connection. And if you don't really get it, you're really misreading Israelis. And I think Israelis are a very misunderstood culture. And they just come across aggressive and rude. And it is very hard for someone that's either American, let's say, or European, Asian, to just understand it theoretically on paper that Israelis are rude and blunt and they cut in the queue and they don't have patience. But how does that help you if you're trying to do business with them? How does that help you if you're trying to date them? So my approach with cultural glasses and understand these cultural DNA is for you to first of all, become aware of yourself, that you are actually walking with your own American DNA. And what does that mean? And then how can you take off those glasses, put on the Israeli glasses, see the world in a way that you were never brought up seeing? And how can that give you a deeper understanding? And imagine you could almost swap glasses during the day. You're like, I just need my Israeli glasses at the moment. I don't want to turn you into an Israeli. If you're Swiss, I want you to say Swiss. But how can you get that additional depth? How can you connect on additional levels? I think that's where the cultural lenses come in. So when you put on the Israeli glasses, you start understanding very essential stuff, like that connection isn't an option in Israeli culture. It becomes a currency of trust. And that's what you have to have. That rules, like many cultures, are just such a necessity and they're sacred. In Israel, it's more about instinct that becomes your guiding star. This notion of success and failure, very different to many cultures. Perfection, that doesn't exist in the Israeli culture. It doesn't value that. Israelis value boldness and they value trying over the concept of failing. Nobody cares about failing here. So in a global world, you're cultural agility, if you wish, your ability to read the emotional code of a place. I don't think it's a soft skill anymore. It's kind of everything.
Why do Israelis thrive on daring adventures, on boldness, on not making plans very far in the future, having no hierarchy?
Explaining a complex culture like Israeli culture, I probably think that the two camp theory is a really great place to start. And imagine taking off your glasses, first of all, putting on the Israeli glasses, and growing up in really a jungle as opposed to a garden. And that's really Israel. And that means that they're wired with this radar or sense of danger, to act fast, to trust your gut. The environment, when I say jungle, it's not about seeing lions, or it's more of understanding the principles of this environment, which is familiarity is really important. So if I trust you, we can survive together. All these glasses are about survival, because that's what humanity is about. So everything here is evolution and survival. So these really survival mechanism that was developed is because of the circumstances. It's almost like a child that's never been wanted by any parent. And these are very traumatic circumstances, and you can understand why it becomes survival. Every culture, the British culture, American culture, are trying to survive. They're just coming from a very different circumstances. So with the Israeli one, it's a much more extreme survival of the fittest, more appropriate to see the jungle metaphor for it. Because in the jungle, you are in danger, you have to be much more daring, and you have to follow your gut. So the rules in the jungle don't work. You have to be very instinctual. So that's the essential. It's really about strong and weak. So that's kind of like the language. So the two camp theory that really helps explain, in my opinion, is about the need that Israelis have when they meet you, trying to place you intuitively, subconsciously into one of these two camps, which is in my camp, or it's the other camp, which is kind of the enemy camp, and you're not my friend. It's a very instinctual kind of, I need to smell you. Where do you belong to? Because if you belong to my camp, and I can trust you, we're a really strong team. We can do this together. I'll protect you if you're weak. If you're strong, you're going to make me shine. So there's all these elements about trying to understand you. This is why a lot of people don't understand why Israelis are very direct. They ask you questions. They meet you in the first 5 minutes, like, did you buy your house? Are you renting it? Do you know who are you? And
That's
in
so
Australia,
true.
I'm facing
So
that all the
true.
time, because I meet people and I need to know within 5 minutes. I just need to know who they are. Is there a connection here? Because if there is, you're going to get me. Like, I'm going to be there for you. I don't want a superficial relationship. I don't want you to smile and say, good morning, how are you? And I have no idea if you like me or you don't. I'd rather not have a relationship with you at all, because that's not for me. I can't work with that. So that's just showing that Israelis just can't do, they always kind of mock this American attitude of, hi, how are you? Right? We don't feel comfortable. I'd rather know that you just dislike me. It's going to make it much easier. I might even change your mind. I might work harder to get you on my camp, but at least I know. And that gives me a much calmer sense, because in the jungle, if I smell potential danger, I'm not relaxed. And you just being polite to me does not make me feel like I'm getting what I should be getting. So that's just to explain. And this is obviously very intuitive. You don't ask your Israeli friends if they're trying to place you in one of these two camps. But I have coached a lot of Israelis, and they were like, oh my God, I really do this. So they subconsciously do that. But I think that when you understand that, you can start understanding the importance of connection. And a lot of cultures value connection, but they don't understand how essential it is for the Israeli one. And that's a big game changer, because when you try to negotiate, when you try to date, Israelis are going to look for that connection no matter how deep they have to go until they find it. And that can make you feel uncomfortable. At least you know why. So you can give it to them quicker or faster, or where you're comfortable. And that's what I'm saying about having this knowledge to manage it. And by the way, you do not need to be Israeli to be in their
Yeah.
camp. I just want to really point that out. A lot of Israelis don't see the other Israelis in their camp. You can be from a different culture, but there's something about how you connect that makes it special. And this is why I get a lot of people who move to Israel, just visit. And you know how these stories, and everyone has them. You walk down the street, someone starts talking to you, and then they invite you to Shabbat dinner. And you go, this stranger just invited me to Shabbat dinner, because there was something that happened there, right? And that's how you get these flip stories. I love one of these people who told these stories in my workshop that they kept going to the market wanting to buy avocados in the stand, and they were always really expensive and it was ridiculous. And then one day they showed up with I think it was a Chelsea shirt, and the Israeli on the avocado stand just really loved Chelsea. And then they had this, great connection over it. And suddenly he handed him a bag of free avocados. And it
Yeah.
was that extreme of like, I'll rip you off to I'll give you free avocados, because that's how Israelis work.
How someone in Indiana or Sri Lanka or anywhere in the world could take this mindset that you're talking about and make their own life better. Maybe learn to be a little bolder or braver.
You can learn a lot from the Israeli culture, but it's really about being very authentic. If there is openness to it, I think it's about being more honest. And Israelis kind of do the 0 to 1 really well. They don't do the 1 to 100, I like to call it. And it's a question of where you want to be, because Israelis are not organized. They're not going to provide a long-term plan. They don't do the analysis as well, but they work with their gut and they're very fast at adapting. So if that's a part that you're lacking, I think, and that's where you want to become more flexible, it's about putting yourself out there, knowing that we're going to try and it's okay if it doesn't work. So that boldness is so intuitive for Israeli. We can't even fathom the concept of why not try. Other cultures, I think, can gain a lot from that. Spontaneity is huge. I think that just thinking more spontaneously and in a more informal way. I love the concept of no hierarchy in the Israeli culture as well. I'm actually not the CEO of Citizen Cafe anymore. I have a CEO, but especially when I was, even today, as kind of more the president, I want someone low in the chain to come to me directly, tell me if they think something's not working. And that's kind of unheard of in a lot of cultures. But I really believe that that's a lot of companies can really thrive when they bring that flatness is huge. I keep hearing about the most innovative ideas in companies coming from the bottom up. So I think those are the kind of things you can start taking just elements of the Israeli culture into workspaces, for example.
Do you find it difficult to persuade American companies that they should really look at more of a flat hierarchy or no hierarchy?
When international companies work with Israeli teams, there's a big culture clash. That's often where I used to come in because of that, because Israelis just do things in a very extreme way. I think when it's just handed in a much more a gentle approach, as opposed to the Israelis' bluntness, companies will be much more open to it. But I think we're also living in an era that people are trying to bring in much more authenticity, more meaning to stuff. So I think there's definitely a shift there to less formality at work. I'm seeing the shift.
Would you say that their success in terms of research and startup and things that are coming out of the Weitzman Institute are predominantly due to having an idea and moving quickly forward, even if it's not perfect, to get something out? The startups, they incubate in Israel and then they end up San Francisco or somewhere else, and then they really expand the size and scope of the business.
Absolutely. First of all, Israelis just cut corners. It's kind of how we do stuff. And they have an idea, they follow it through. It's very much that kind of the typical Israeli childhood. You're out there, you're alone, you have to figure it out yourself, and you become very independent. So you don't need a big structure behind you, a long-term plan to start working through something. You just start and you go with it as it happens. So I think that's just the mentality. I don't know the academic world as much, but certainly Startup Nation. You kind of walk around Tel Aviv and everyone's on their laptops, in cafes because they all have a startup. It's almost like a joke, but that's just the mentality.
I would like to talk about Citizen Cafe, and you have 20,000 students worldwide. That's amazing. How old is the company?
We just celebrated 10 years. And we started in cafes. Just my partner, who was really the mind behind the methodology of Fret, who came with the concept of teaching Hebrew totally different. And my obsession was, how do I get my friends who were moving to Tel Aviv from all over the world and were not immersing in Israel and were leaving? That was very painful for me.
You want them to fall in love with it.
Yes, and they were just investing in Hebrew that was actually doing the opposite, making them feel very disconnected and not like a local. And so when we combined the Hebrew with very much a lifestyle orientated approach, you're just kind of a better version of yourself when you speak a specific kind of Hebrew that's intuitive, that's fast, that Israelis react to you thinking that you speak Hebrew. That's all it takes. It's almost like if I taught you one sentence in Italian, we went together to Italy, and you could order coffee like an Italian, it would change your weekend in Rome because that waiter looked at you just a little bit differently. And that's really all it takes. It's not about mastering a language. It's about how you feel. It's like the quality, not the quantity, right?
And if you speak that one sentence in Hebrew very well, you're in their
Yes.
camp, right? You're
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. That's what the first thing we teach is actually how to order coffee, because you can't order coffee like a stranger. Like you can't order coffee like a typical American. You'll say it like the Israeli do. And then you'll get that energy and that love. And it doesn't matter if you go on to English later on, they appreciate it. And then you feel part of the conversation, part of the culture. And that's always been my life obsession, how to get people and myself to feel local wherever you are.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Anirudza Afukatan? Did I say it right?
Yes. Yes. Katan. Yes. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. My time at Citizen Cafe has paid off. I can order my own coffee.
Absolutely. That's all it
Uh,
takes.
what's next for Citizen Cafe in the next 5 years?
That's a great question. There's so much opportunity at the moment, especially the Jewish world is looking for deeper connection, deeper meaning and community. Citizen has grown so much. We have 100 employees globally. We have this incredible company culture where people can be digital nomads. So we get to recruit. People leave high tech to teach at Citizen Cafe. Thousands of people audition yearly. About 20 or 30 get accepted out of like 1,500 each time. We go through rounds of auditioning. It's really actually hard to get into teaching Citizen Cafe. And this is when people study with us. I think this is what is the secret sauce, is not only the methodology, is the teachers, because they represent an energy, an Israeli energy, a charismatic energy that a lot of people don't have in their life. And so the teachers become a huge anchor for them, which is, people have this kind of stereotype of what a Hebrew teacher is. Anything but that is what we have at Citizen Cafe.
What's so special about the ideal Citizen Cafe teacher, the nomad?
So, first of all, it's a personality. It's all heart and very charismatic and very loving, very Israeli Tel Avivian vibe in the sense that they're very authentic, they're very real. They bring in that heart to the class. The resilience of the teachers has been an inspiration for we get a lot of letters that the resilience of the class, they cry together, they laugh together. The strength of our teachers brings them a lot of hope. They talk about that stuff, although we don't bring politics in, we bring real life. And so they get this like Israel in their veins. Also bring it to children, which we don't do today. So every child in the world not only speaks conversational Hebrew, connects to their Jewish identity in a modern way, which they don't today. And this is something we have failed deeply as a society. And we have to bring much more depth and meaning to our Jewish identity.
Talk to me a little bit about this idea of chaos and how in the Israeli formula, how this creates meaning and seriously amazing outcomes.
The Israelis are always on sprints. We just don't do marathons, and we don't do the long process. We can't even sustain like governments for more than a little bit of time. It's very challenging, and chaos is a big part of it. It's the communication, it's the order. Everything feels very chaotic for a lot of people who are not Israeli, and it's very overwhelming. If you go into meetings with Israelis, you'll see that it's not organized. People interrupt each other, but chaos in Israeli culture, if you look at these meetings, turns into a very creative conversation because it's not structured. They don't think inside the box. They want to see beyond. They want to be challenged. If I'm in my management meeting and everyone's just going to be yes to everything I say and they don't challenge me, they don't take me to new places, then that meeting is not a useful meeting to me. They want to break the barriers. They want to break the rules. That's an opportunity for a lot of people who feel safe in those places but are always wondering, how can I break through? That's the first thing that I think we need to understand, that there's creativity lives in chaos, and Israelis are comfortable with it. So the more you get comfortable in knowing that that's actually their organized way of working, that will make working with them easier. So that's, I would say, the first thing. Things need to move fast with Israelis, and I think that's an opportunity for people to try and bring in. Don't you want to try and create something and check it out quickly, see if it's worth your time? I think everybody would want to sprint on things, and not everything needs to be structured. So having a little bit, 20% of the Israeli mindset, and cutting some of those steps that just aren't necessary can be so valuable for people, in my opinion. The no hierarchy approach, the boss is just one of the team, can really bring amazing ideas to the company, create a more meaningful place people can feel seen. I think that's needed today. And that can be taken from the Israeli culture. That's a lot about the informality, the less we have to think about how we phrase things, and authenticity. And I think the authenticity is what everyone's lacking. You get things done faster when someone's telling you the truth. If someone tells me they don't agree with me, especially people need to hear this, when Israelis, they usually very abruptly will tell you, I don't agree with you. Understanding that when Israelis disagree so bluntly, it's their way of connecting. It's their way of trusting you to go, it's my responsibility for us as a team. If I don't tell you the truth, I don't agree with you, how are we going to get to our goal? This is not about me not liking you. This is about me wanting to make you better. And it's about shifting that mindset that this is actually love instead of the opposite.
I love that, what you just said, applicable outside of Israel for people who are listening to the podcast and just say, well, I'm not going to Tel Aviv, or I'm not doing business with an Israeli company. Why do I care? You're talking about successes and proven track record, and you have the formula and you're sharing it. I really appreciate that. Thanks for listening to the Israeli Trailblazers Show. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, post it on all of your socials. And remember, you don't have to move to Israel to live a bold and direct life. Listen to Tamar and hack the Israeli mindset. Be braver and be more authentic. Until next time, I'm your host, Jennifer Weissman.